Hello, everyone. Welcome to this amazing interview. We're going to interview a comic artist. We'll be talking about making a living in the industry and learning from their experiences. You can call me MG, and my guest today is Amrit, a full-stack senior creative, a New York Times Best-Selling Illustrator, and the owner of Amco Studio. His client work includes big names like Disney, Adobe, Bandai Namco, Adidas, Square Enix, Ubisoft, and so many more. He currently has a couple of successful Kickstarter projects, including Read of You, an anime-inspired dark fantasy graphic novel series. All his links will be in the description of this video. He is currently based in London, England, and without further ado, let's go to the interview. I'm very happy to have Amrit here, so I'm super excited that you accepted.
Oh, it's no problem. No, I mean, we had a lovely chat last time we spoke on, I think it was an Instagram Live.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about you, and I enjoyed talking to you, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. And it's our turn to learn about you because you have so much experience. So I wanted to start with your background as far as you can go. How did your love for art started?
Oh, that's a nice question. So that's a really good question. So I think it actually started when I was a very young child, and my parents would give me a piece of paper and a pen to kind of occupy myself, and I just did not stop drawing from that point. So I kind of got obsessed with it from there. And I think I've been really fortunate as I've gotten to know people over my life, different people and different careers and different personalities. I was actually really fortunate to know from a young age exactly what I wanted to do. And it was to create, but most specifically to illustrate and to draw. So yeah, I mean, it's something that I've always done my whole life from that point. I never really knew what to draw, like what I was going to, what career could possibly be achieved with drawing, until I came across my first comic book, which was actually a Judge Dredd comic book, which was it just brought my imagination to life, and then Spider-Man, and then it kind of went from there, really around 11 years old, and then it became an obsession. So yeah, that's kind of as far as it goes back in terms of my love for drawing and creating. It was never an easy journey, but it's a journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. But that's amazing. You started so young. Did you start with fan art then, or just whatever you came up with?
How did I start? I started with, definitely with fan art. I started tracing, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I used to trace all the drawings the artists that I liked and the drawings that I liked. Spider-Man was a big one, actually. Spider-Man seems to be a big one for most kids. I'm not sure what it is about Spider-Man. And the funny thing is, I'm actually not so great with spiders. I don't love spiders at all. So Spider-Man is an anomaly. But Spider-Man was my obsession. And then kind of very quickly, as I hit my early teen years, it became more about anime. Still Spider-Man, but then, Pokemon, and then Dragon Ball Z, and then all of that kind of thing.
Of course.
So I used to, Dragon Ball Z wasn't so available in the UK when I was younger to kind of buy. You had to watch it at a very specific time on a very specific channel. So I used to record them all, and then I'd record them all on like VHS tapes, and then I'd draw my own covers for them. So, and then I had the whole collection of Dragon Ball Z, and I draw the covers. That was quite cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's a memory of mine. I'm sure my mom's got those somewhere still.
But
yeah, it's always, I think so. Mm-hmm. It's always been an obsession.
Mm-hmm. No, that's amazing. And I'm super interested because I do see both the Western influence in your art, but also the anime and Japanese influence. So that's fascinating.
That's good to know. That's good to know. I've always tried to straddle the balance in between those two worlds. They're so visually different, but at the same time similar. And when you bring them together, or when you can bring them together, I feel like I sit somewhere in the middle of them, which is quite nice.
That's amazing.
Mm.
Okay, so you found your calling, and then did you decide to study something related? Did you have art education teachers, or just self-taught?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did study the arts, lots of like fine art at school, fine art, and
Nice.
but the thing I actually excelled at school was graphic design more so than art classes. Because art classes they made me do painting and all of this like collage work and things like that. And
Hmm.
I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to draw. I didn't get enough opportunity to actually do the drawing I wanted.
Okay.
So I didn't really like art that much. I
Hmm.
liked graphic design. That was really cool. And we got to use computers as well. That ties in later to kind of the digital workflows and things like that. Um, and then I studied university illustration, and that was a mixed experience as well. I think still the public zeitgeist on graphic novels and comics and pop culture, it hadn't really burst, so it was still very much a niche thing. So when I was studying, they kind of wanted me to draw trees and study Oscar Wilde and all of these things, which are fascinating and great things to draw. But I so was not down for that. Like I can't even begin to tell you that was not what I wanted to do. I mean, it wasn't really until the third year that I probably applied myself to my degree, and I was able to do some of the things I wanted to do. But yeah, no, it wasn't. I hadn't. It took a long time for me to find a place within the art world to kind of exist. So yeah, my education was definitely an art education, but I've said it many times over the years. If I could go back and redo my education, I would do business or law. I would do one of those two things, maybe both.
Okay.
They would have been more useful to me than the creative education, which it's not for everyone. But if someone's gonna if someone interested in art is gonna ask me what to study, I would tell them to study business. I would not tell them to study art because a lot of that does tend to be self-taught, and the actual degree or qualification seems to be more of a formality. And I'm someone that has all of those things, so I'm only talking from my own experience. But I would never advise anyone to do a creative degree. That's my take.
Wow.
Um,
I love that. No, I love it so much because I feel like so many people choose these art careers, me included, maybe, that we think will prepare us, but actually they're not really giving us the tools that we need for the actual work. And I feel
yeah,
there are so many, well, nowadays, thank goodness, there are so many online courses with teachers that do work in the industry that are way better, maybe, than uh, something that has too many generic stuff. I
yeah,
can relate to that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I don't know if it's a me thing or if it's an everyone thing. So I'll just say that before I say what I'm going to say next, which is I've never really found it useful to try and be taught by others, like to do a course or to sit in a lesson. I've always just had to get my hands dirty. So if I want to do something, I cannot sit and listen to someone tell me what to do. This is probably a fault, like a character fault. I have to go and figure it out myself. Like if there's a style that I want to achieve, like I really liked David Finch, for example. He's a fabulous artist. He's one of the best artists. He's one of my favorite artists. But I bought his one of his courses, and it was really useful. And I learned some things from it, like structurally. I couldn't sit and do the lessons. I actually could not sit. I had to. Well, the way I work, my mind works, I have to look at stuff and then replicate it over and over. I can't listen to someone tell me how to do it. It doesn't work in my brain. So, I don't know if there's something to doing courses or actually just going to figure it out. Like going to figure something out is where I thrive. So that's what I like to do.
Okay. I think it's a strength, especially if you know that you have it and you're using it because you know yourself. So
Mm.
that's honestly, I think most people learn by doing. And
Yeah.
even the teachers I consume, like for example, Proco, I don't know if you know him, but
No.
oh, he has a YouTube channel about anatomy, for example.
Mm.
And I remember that when I watched it, I was sick, so I was not doing it. And he himself,
Yeah.
the teacher, was saying, if you don't do it, you will not learn. So
Mm.
just watching it is usually a mistake. So I think it's very smart to get your hands
Mm.
dirty, as you say.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably a mixture of that's good advice though. If you don't do it, you won't learn. That is really good advice.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so um, I think it's brave and cool that you went for being an artist, even if it's an art education that maybe you wouldn't have taken it, but you were honest to your own purpose. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
something very cool. Um, I feel many of us are afraid to take that step, and then we take the safe route, but not because we're really just thinking about plan B. Though, yeah, as you say, business would be very cool if we do that. So that's very smart.
Yeah. I mean with the plan B, plan A, plan B, you know, I remember being told to have a plan B. And I remember thinking, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. But I just knew that if there was a plan B, if you've got a plan B, like a slightly easier, slightly safer version where it's just enough to put your dreams on the shelf, you take it. You'll fall back on that all day long.
Yeah.
Like absolutely. And you know, I'm not saying everyone does. Maybe the most I can say is that I knew I would. So I knew I couldn't have a plan B. It just had to be this or nothing. And it's not that I didn't have a plan B, because I probably did. I mean, I really loved graphic design, and I actually, when I first graduated, I was very disillusioned with the idea of being an artist and being a comic book artist specifically because did lots of research over the years into the industry, and it's, you know, comic books themselves are probably a cottage industry within publishing. It's a very, very small sector. It's very hard to make a reasonable amount of money to live a reasonable life. And I'm talking reasonable. I'm talking, you know, just maybe even average is what I'm talking. Very, very hard. Where it's very, very easy to go into graphic design. So I mean, I went into graphic design. I went into creative design. I went into web design and then web development actually for a good 3 or 4 years early on in my career, and I was making really good money, and I was really happy. No. I was making really good money, and I was really happy with the money. I wasn't happy with the work.
Yeah.
It was not. So I graduated. I got a job in an agency, which I loved actually. I loved working in my first agency. They were really great. And then I got a big job in London, and I decided to go for it. And you know, again, it was a really innovative company. It was a really just one of the best possible. It was actually a fashion e-commerce company. If you're into fashion and if you're into e-commerce, it's probably one of the best places you could ever work. But I wasn't into either of those things. So I did not like it at all. And I knew after 3 weeks that I didn't want to work there. And I stuck it out for just over a year. No, about 18 months actually, because you know I didn't really know what to do, and I just decided to go freelance. I got a small contract, a small retainer with my first agency who I'd worked with, that was just enough to kind of cover what I needed to cover. And then I went freelance, completely freelance, and that was really scary at the time, but it paid off. I doubled my income in 2 weeks. Everything got way, way better, but it still wasn't illustration. So this is just the journey of kind of going through the creative field, try to find where it was that I would exist and where I'd be happiest. And, you know, in the end, it was kind of what's that phrase that people say, you know, there's when luck and opportunity meet, that kind of thing. I
Yeah,
don't know.
like preparation meets,
This is the one.
right?
This is the one.
Preparation meets
Preparation
opportunity.
meets opportunity. Yeah, something like that. But it was that exact thing. So I was freelance. I was making good money. I was doing some illustration work, and I was slowly kind of phasing out the graphic design, moving into the illustration work more so. It wasn't big illustration work. It was there was small but fun clients. They paid not that well, but it was kind of something that was allowing me to build a portfolio in that section sector. I was probably about 23 or 24 at this point, maybe I wasn't. I'd say I was 24, and yeah, and then I just got really lucky. Publisher just emailed me one day. I had a publisher emailed me one day, really randomly. No, 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 tell a lie. A TV station emailed me one day really randomly, and I ended up on like live national TV to do this illustration for this presenter who's called John Humphreys. He's very famous in the UK. Back in the days, like one of these classic kind of like presenters. And yeah, so that happened, and I think that helped some way with the next part of this. Maybe not. I'll never really know. And then a couple of weeks later, I got an inquiry from a football club and maybe the biggest book publisher in the world, Hachette, or at the very least top three. They're huge, and with this book for Joe Sugg, who was a YouTuber. He had a YouTube channel. I think he had about 3 or 4 million followers at the time, and they were doing a graphic novel. And it was one of these things where I'd spent, you know, I think that project was going to get cancelled if they couldn't find an artist. They'd done lots of inquiries, they couldn't find an artist. They had a fixed budget, they had a fixed timeline, and they didn't. And Joe wanted to do a graphic novel. He's really passionate about graphic novels, which is great. So yeah. Anyway, it was one of these things where they come to me with a reasonable amount of money to say that it is my first ever potential gig. But in the grand scheme of things, the first book was probably very low paid. But you kind of have to do that to start with. Was my view, and I was already making good money, and I had some savings, so I managed to take this on, and we did about 180-page graphic novel in about 12 weeks, which was a bit crazy.
Yeah.
But had it not been for the years prior of me practicing and me building relationships with people so I could hire a team to help deliver that project, had it not been the fact that I said yes to the impossible and I took the risk of that, I mean, that should have failed. I should have fallen flat on my face with a 12-week deadline to do 180 pages for a very high-profile YouTuber for a very, very big publisher. That should have just gone really, really wrong. And it went really right because of all the things I'd done prior. So this is the preparation and the opportunity and a bit of luck. So, had I not done that, I don't know what would have happened next for my art career. And I can't ever say that was my best work because it was 180 pages in 12 weeks.
Of
But I
course.
can say it was my best work in 12 weeks. And I can say I'm so proud of it because I managed to hire a team of 4. I managed to not only draw it, but project manage it and deliver it. And it went on to be the fastest selling graphic novel since records began, and a bestseller. So it did very, very well indeed. So, had I doubted myself at any point in that, had I not been young and naive and almost arrogant with my belief to a degree, that might not have happened. So, I look back fondly on that.
That's an amazing story. I really want to read this comic. No, that's amazing. I was wondering, you do need that spark that, you did an investment, literally, because you were going to make this happen. And I feel that attitude is super important to anyone that wants to be an artist. You cannot hesitate that much. And I'm saying that because I'm the master of hesitating. I'm the plan B girl. And I go back and forth between prioritizing plan A and plan B. So I love that you went for it, you were assertive, you were direct. And you were a little crazy, definitely, but that's
Okay.
super nice that it paid off.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think there's an element of naivety to it as well, because if the same thing happened today, I would not take it.
Yeah.
I would not do it. So, there's an element of youth and naivety in that story that paid off really well. You can take risks when you're much younger. It becomes harder as you accrue things, as you accrue reputation and things in your life, whether even a car or a house or whatever it might be. Then you've got to look after those things. In a family, you've got to look after those things, and it's like it becomes harder to be ridiculously silly and do things like that. But yeah, so that's yeah, take
Yeah,
risks earlier on.
definitely. I completely agree. Of course, it's tougher when you grow up and you have more responsibilities. So then, you gathered your team, and that's when Amco Studio began? Like you.
Yeah, it was all one big accident, really. To be honest, it was we did that first graphic novel, and from that point, things just got really, really busy. Joe Sugg was so passionate about graphic novels, about storytelling, about publicizing it, and he had a profile that commanded the attention of really large media institutions and newspapers. And to be fair, this plays in kind of later on with the other projects that I've done. But God, to be fair to the guy, he got so behind that project. And I don't know the deal. I don't know the deal that he got. I don't know the deal with the publisher. I don't know, but like genuinely, I felt the passion. Like he wanted to be behind that 100%, and that isn't always the case when you're working with a big publisher with a large advance and a large audience. It's not always the case. You have to get behind those things. Maybe you do, but in my experience, I don't think it is necessarily. But he did, and he made it. Like honestly, we know without us there would have been no product. Without him, there would have been no sales, and so it was a true, just this moment in time that it really really sparked a lot of things off, and from then we just got really busy. So the next year we did the sequel graphic novel, and I was working with a lot of kind of brands and agencies from that point on some really cool stuff. Whether it's like we were doing some concept art for an advert for Batman versus Superman. I think that was around that time. Maybe it was a bit after. Things like this, really, some stuff that never even saw the light of day.
Yeah.
I was running competitions, so my Instagram started to grow at that point as well, and so did my Twitter. So I had like 200 followers on Twitter and like 80 followers on Instagram. And over the next couple of years, that kind of jumped to about 10 or 12,000 on Twitter and about 15 or 20,000 on Instagram. Well, maybe about 15,000 on Instagram. And I was running competitions for brands and for huge cinema chains on my Instagram, and it seemed to be going. It was a non-stop train. And to be fair, it still hasn't really stopped. It's still continuing. It's leveled off in a nice way, but in terms of the train, it's still going full pelt. But those next maybe 8 years or so were just a blur, complete blur. Doing adaptations of for like a promo adaptation of a movie, a Universal Studios movie, to drawing like LeBron James, like biggest basketball player in the world. Ricky Gervais. I did private commissions for celebrities, just all sorts, absolutely all sorts of things. We did two 180-page graphic novels simultaneously in about 4 or 5 months. And that was crazy as well. So that was in 2016, and that took about 8 people, maybe more. And I was managing that whole team, done all the hiring, allocated the budgets and things, and still managed to pay everyone, fulfill my obligations to the publisher, and around this time I also got my agent. So my publishing agent, James Wills, Watson Mittle. So they're really great, and yeah, it all just totally kicked off from there, really.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, I've seen some of the works in your website, and they look
Yeah.
really, really good. I was super
Oh,
impressed with the ones I personally knew, like the movie Glass, that
oh yeah.
you did like key art or I don't know
Yeah, we did a
concepts.
promo. We did a promo poster, like a promo piece of art. It was going to be either a poster or like maybe even a big 3D projection. It was going to be something really cool. And the artwork, I think we did a great job on it.
Yeah.
But it got pulled at the last second, I think, because the movie didn't get very well. I think it was because of the reviews didn't end up being so great for Glass. But all I know is, I mean, we still got paid and everything, and you know, it's still a really cool piece.
Yeah.
We still did it, but it didn't get used in the way it was going to get used, which was going to be really huge. And I've always been disappointed with that because it's one of my favorite pieces that we did actually.
I can imagine. I do like the movie personally. uh,
You know, I love the director and I love the whole cast in those movies. You know, James McAvoy, Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, particular. They're all just so fantastic. And in Split, we did some work for Split as well. But in Split, the female actress in that, I don't know her. Was it Anya something? Is that right?
yeah, Anna Taylor Joy, I think.
Yes, Anna Taylor Joy. That's right. She's fantastic. She was fantastic in that movie.
Yes,
Glass sucked though. Glass sucked
I
so
know.
hard. It sucked so hard. It's like it really needed to build to a climax that never happened, and I was just like, "What? You've got all of this talent, and you've got, you
Yeah.
know, it baffles me to this day." And Split was so good as well, and the twist at the end was so good as well, and it was like back to form, and I was just so disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, you know, you can't have more. Unbreakable is still a phenomenal film. In fact, I don't know if it was the PR company or the studio, but they asked me for a quote, and one of the things that I said when doing that project was that Unbreakable was so ahead of its time as a superhero movie. It subverted expectations before there was even a genre. Like if superheroes is a genre of movie, it was subverting expectations on that genre before the genre existed. Like if you release that now, it's genius, but they still managed to make it genius then, and I don't really know how. So yeah, that is a great film.
Oh, that's great. I think I didn't watch it. Maybe it lost me the other one. Sorry.
Unbreakable, watch Unbreakable. It's really good.
I will definitely. There are many things that you mentioned that I'm like, I have heard of these things, but I don't fully know. But I'm definitely going to research after this.
Okay.
But that's amazing. I love this. Okay, so you charge per project then.
I mean, okay, so I was working with a coach, it was like a he was like a life coach to be honest, but we focused a lot on business and a lot on finances. And you know, I can honestly say that without him, I might not have dreamt so big. So you know, sometimes I guess you know, revisiting to earlier parts of the conversation about plan A's and plan B's, I had no idea what to do with all of this attention, and I was just going to ride it. And he really helped me. Like he stimulated thought that brought me to the conclusion that I needed to start like some kind of agency or studio, or if I couldn't keep up with the amount of work, and I was always snowed under with work. I was always working 18 hours a day and sleeping for 5-6 hours. I needed people to help, like really, I needed people to help. So he kind of helped me go in that direction. He made me over a period of about 8 months. He took my day rate, charging for time. Yes, he trebled it, and then quadrupled it after another year, or 8 months. So you know, from where I thought that I could have been, he did help me see that I could be somewhere completely different. And to quadruple one's day rate in less than a year is crazy.
It
But
is.
you know something? It did not. It did not affect anything. The aim was to charge more, and at the very least earn the same amount and be less busy. So instead of focusing on the quantity aspect, you're focusing on the qualitative aspect, and that was the aim with that. And it did work. Only it worked in both ways. So not only did it not reduce the workload, but it kept the workload the same, and I was earning more. So never you can never really understand or doubt your own value. You have to understand your own value in the marketplace. Everyone has to, and it's not that at all points in my life I've had that leverage. It's not that in certain rooms and in certain meetings I definitely don't have that leverage. At this point in time, with the kind of work that I was getting, whether it was we did like promo trailers for like FIFA for the World Cup, and all sorts of that illustrative advertising, animation projects, video game projects. It was that I could charge those rates, and that was where I find myself in a really good place. I was able to pay people. I was able to sleep. I was able to scale up the business in a way that with all the professional people, like a lawyer to help and accountants to help and things like that. So yeah, charge per day. We usually license the artwork where possible as well. So not only we retain the rights. This was everything's a negotiation, and what we would try to always do is retain the rights to the artwork we produce and either license it exclusively, and or usually perpetually, but occasionally on a basis that the license would expire and a client would then renew the license or renew it for different uses as required. So quite a complex licensing structure that didn't work as much as I wanted it to, because really, when it comes down to it, big companies are not going to let me license the work. Like they want to own the work to exploit. A video game company is not going to let me license the work, and that's a ridiculous premise. It's just like it's a non-starter. Like I didn't know that. I was still quite young, and I tried my best, and it's one of those things. So it was a combination of day rate charging, of licensing, and then occasionally of royalties as well, where possible. And that's it's kind of a buzzword, and it's royalties are never really that much. They're never really that much. They're never it's rarely a royalties life-changing money. So don't want to make it sound too good.
No, yeah, for sure. And it sounds like a lot of work. With my client right now, I try to license the artwork, and he was like, "Oh, you can charge more if you don't license the artwork." So I was like, "Okay."
That's great. That's a buyout. That's a buyout rate. That's excellent, though. But the thing is, had you not had that conversation, then you'd have sold it for less. And the thing is, like, thought about this a lot, and I've come to the conclusion that us artists are too precious about what we do. Because someone that, like a heart surgeon that saves someone's life, do they I don't know, do they own a license on that person's heart? Or like someone that creates a really business critical spreadsheet or formula, can they license that to a company? Like there's creativity in so many different formats, so many different ways. Just because we're putting pen to paper and drawing lines, why do we feel the need to license? Why do we think that's ours? But someone else's software intellectual property they create when they're working for a company, like an Excel spreadsheet or some kind of software, I don't know, software. Why is that not theirs? And why is that same mentality not there? So to a degree, I think we might all be being a bit precious about it, and the focus should really be on not other people's intellectual properties, but our own intellectual properties, which is where 2023 and 2024 kind of brings me more so. I mean, the only thing I will say to that is ongoing royalty payments, if you are able to secure licensing on the right kind of project. I mean, for example, some of these Christmas songs, these really famous Christmas songs, from people that sung them in the 70s. I can't remember the band's name. I just heard this today. I was listening to something today, it was it was a Christmas song sung in 1973. And I think the two guys co-wrote it. They still make £1 million a year in royalties to this day
God.
because it's such a popular song.
Mhm.
But I guess that speaks to my second point, which is focus on your own intellectual property, not on someone else's. So you're only going to ever get so much of someone else's thing, and I think you should only really ever want so much of someone else's thing. You want your own thing, and you do that with your webcomic.
Thank you. I was actually, yeah, going to go to you're doing your own comic now, and you have mentioned that even though you're working on comics, animatics for someone else, animation, that's amazing, by the way. So much experience, so many different types of artwork, and now you're trying writing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that was so. Yeah, I mean, I've always stuck to the creative side of things. Animation more recently. What have I done recently? Animatic for Ferrari. I think that was last year.
Wow.
Ubisoft 2.5D animation. I just did the illustrations though, and someone else did the animation. I think all of the animation. I can't remember if we did any of it. I don't think we did. Yeah, and it was really cool stuff. I work with animators to kind of help when I'm too busy, but also I do animation myself. I'm loving the animation at the moment. But with the writing, I think I've seen a lot of artists jump to writing. Maybe not because they think they can do it, but I think as you mature as an artist, you become maybe a bit more curious. Like you've read, like when you read and illustrate a script, and I've read and illustrated quite literally thousands of pages of scripts and graphic novels. Quite literally, that's the number, and you get a sense, like we all have an innate sense of narrative anyway. I think with the amount of things that we watch, the type of shows that we watch, and everything's a story. So fundamentally, we're living our lives, and our whole lives are really a story. I'm telling you a story about my life in this conversation, and it's only a story based on kind of how I perceive memory. But yeah, so it really is kind of like you become curious, and you do have an innate sense of storytelling. And I think maybe you think it's easier than it's going to be, but writing is one of the most challenging things that I've ever tried to do. I'd say. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I completely agree.
It's because anything can happen. Like, and it's the same with drawing in a way. Like, you can draw anything. Like, why would you draw the person walking down the street with like a flat head-on angle when you can do a low angle or a high angle? And a low angle and high, they're a little bit more challenging. But as you get better as an artist and mature as an artist and understand kind of foreshortening and perspective and anatomy, you're able to contort and break the rules and all sorts, and that's loads of fun. But that does get a bit boring. So then you look to the next thing, and it's like, oh, this is challenging. And writing was something that. So when I was in, this is going to sound really strange to call back to, but I do truly believe that the things that we enjoy in our adult lives are things that maybe we did when we were kids too, and that kind of follows through. I excelled at creative writing throughout my whole education, and then I went to the drawing, and then I realized that actually I love to tell stories, and the next logical step was for me to write and draw my own story, and it was about 2018, 2019 when I probably started trying to write, and talking about courses, I didn't take any courses. I listened to so many YouTube videos, and no, I took one course, listened to so many YouTube videos, read so many books. But again, the way I really did it was kind of, I absorbed some of that information, and then I had to just go and write and write and write, which is why the project Rid of You that I've been working on for so long which is probably why it took so long, actually, because I done I don't know how many iterations of it I did. It scares me to think about the amount of iterations that I did. But it took that, and that was my big learning curve for drawing. For writing, was not just this project, but it was the process behind the project. I worked with a lot of editors. Maddie, who helped me shape it in a writing sense. She's a more experienced writer than me. A number of other writers and kind of proofreaders and beta readers as well that helped shape it. So I was far from on my own, but I did kind of it happened, which has been really fun.
Congratulations for doing something so difficult.
Oh,
And
thanks.
yeah, I completely agree. I also spent so much time listening and learning, but at the end
Mm.
of the day, it's the execution, like
Yeah,
doing
it's the
your own
execution.
writing.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's the execution. It is the execution.
Hmm.
But you can have these. You can have like an average story with like really exceptional execution in a few places,
Hmm.
like an exceptional hook, an exceptional midpoint, and an exceptional finale, conclusion, climax. If you get those three, like everything in between, I'm not saying you should, but they can be just meh if you really hit the notes. And what I found to be way more important than anything is like the internal character arc.
Hmm.
The moment a character realizes something that he needs to, or he or she needs to realize, or the moment their core wound or their flaw becomes exposed, and the moment the solution comes to them, that's that moment in a film where your spine tingles.
Yeah.
That's what that is. So when Tony Stark says I am Iron Man, like
Hmm.
that moment, that was that right there. That wasn't about like any of the action. It wasn't about anything. It was about
Hmm.
his character, and his character like hitting a point where he knew what he needed to do, and it was based on all of this other experience, and yeah, that is storytelling more than
Hmm.
anything.
That's amazing. It does seem now the way you talk shows that you have experience now in this because of how
Yeah,
much time and work and sweat and tears probably went into this.
tears, many tears, yeah, many tears.
Definitely. Yeah, also because I mean something very interesting and just I'll be quick about this. There are many comic artists that start just drawing, but the story at the end of the day is very, very important for someone to actually love the comic. I do have some comics where the artwork was maybe better than the story, and I revised them as an artist.
Mm.
But as a reader and as a consumer, maybe my favorite manga and comics are because of the story, definitely.
Mm. Mm.
I would love
It's
if they have
definitely
better artwork, but
it's interesting. Like I think the artwork helps sell the book,
yeah.
but the story is what gives it like longevity and what will keep it selling. There's
Mhm.
only so many pretty bad books you can sell,
Mhm.
but when the story, when the readers don't read the next book, or it's not well reviewed, or it's like the movie Sucker Punch. Have you seen the movie Sucker
Yeah.
Punch?
Yeah.
Oh, that film looks so good.
Yeah, it
I,
looks
I
very
had to
good.
turn it off after 20 minutes. I did not know what was going on. The story just seemed all over the place. And, I love Zack Snyder's visual style, but I could not watch that film.
Mhm.
I could not watch it. So that's just my take. But yeah, so, I hope, I hope Rid of You isn't necessarily one of those projects
No.
where it's, you know, I hope not. I mean, it could be. I would hope that's not the case. But here's the thing. Even if that is the case, I told the story I wanted to tell, and I've told it not only as well as I could. I went to extraordinary lengths to make it as good as I possibly could. Um, and if it still isn't what I wanted it to be, that's okay because I did my best. And the
Mhm.
next one, I'll get better, and that's okay. But
Exactly.
hopefully it's okay.
I personally, I read the first part. I loved it, and
Oh, good.
uh, I really like those topics and themes also, the fairy motifs, and it reminds me of my childhood stories,
Oh,
and
good.
going into another world. I won't spoil much for anyone who wants to actually read it,
Mm.
but I found it super fun, and I'm also a very big fan of high fantasy and romance, so I was definitely the
Good,
target
good.
audience.
Oh, I'm glad. Well, I'm glad, and it was a risky first book, to be honest, because
Mhm.
it was planned initially as a 6-issue arc, and this book was only supposed to be about 25 or 30 pages of the whole story, and it's become 136 pages. So we really, like, through one of the iterations that we did of this story, like, some of the feedback I was getting was that parts didn't feel fleshed out enough, and when I read it, I just felt like it was rushing
Mhm.
to. There's some really, really, really cool plot points that I wanted to get to writing, but what I realized was that, if, like, think about Iron Man 1. If Iron Man 1 was like, it wasn't the best movie. It wasn't. It was like an average movie. It was like maybe 70%. It was like a B minus.
Mhm.
But, like, without Iron Man 1, uh, uh, Infinity War wouldn't have been a thing, and that for me was an
Yeah.
exceptional movie. So, like, I didn't see. I'm not comparing my book to Iron Man. Iron Man's come up a lot here. I don't know why, but what I'm saying is, like, I thought by making the first book exactly what it needed to be, which was exactly what it ended up being. Like, book 2 and 3 just go so next level. I can't even begin to describe.
I'm so
Um,
excited.
Honestly, like it's really exciting. I'm glad you're excited. I'm glad you liked book 1. And, like, the way the story was always meant to be told was like book 2 and 3. Without book 2 and 3, book 1 is really just a part of a story, and I hope in a way it feels like that, because that's what it should feel like.
Mhm.
Like, book 2 and 3 are just so next level. Like, can't even. I just cannot wait for people to read it. And, like, if people don't like this story, I've really done my best. Like,
Mhm.
I couldn't do more. So, I'm quietly confident, and all you can do is take the feedback on board and iterate and do it again. So that's what I'll do.
Yeah. Congratulations. You can be proud of this. I mean, it's,
I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud to have it out of my head. I'm so proud to have brought these characters to life. I'm so proud to have told this story. I'm so proud to have, like, one of the hardest things with any creative project is there's this whole phrase. It's, done, not perfect.
Mhm.
You want it done, done, not perfect. And so many people stay in that perfectionist kind of zone, and so much material doesn't see the light of day, or gets overworked, or becomes something completely different because of that. Well, it might be a good thing, but to get something done and then to iterate is the best way to do it. So I'm glad I finally managed to get to an iteration, and the only reason this ever got released was because I actually announced the launch date. It's the only way it was going to get released, because otherwise I was going to keep going and keep going and keep going. So,
Mhm.
and now, actually, so after book 3, which is coming out next, I think we're launching. One of the problems I'm finding, actually, with launching multiple Kickstarters simultaneously is
Yeah.
I feel really wrong about launching the next one before fulfilling. Although the book's done and I want to launch it every 2 or 3 months, it takes some time for the fulfillment to get everything printed, packed, and sent, to give people some grace period before the next one launches, so that there's no spoilers and things like that. So there's that aspect of things I hadn't really accounted for necessarily.
Mhm.
But what me and Maddie are doing is, we're telling more stories next year. So we've got at least two more series that we're launching next year, after Rid of You, and then also some novellas and novels as well alongside that. So there's going to be a lot of stories coming out next year. So, the aim is for us to draw an 80-page graphic novel in about 5 or 6 weeks, launch one every 2 to 3 months, and keep going like that, which is going to be an interesting year. So
Wow. Yeah. So many things coming up. Also, the climax of Read of You.
Yeah.
which does impact the whole opinion on a reader,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
you
it can
said.
do. Yeah.
I realized what you said earlier about, having the climax be so strong. The reader is just, oh, this is a great story, even if maybe some part is a little weak. Most of
Yeah,
it,
absolutely.
the
Yeah,
flavor of
absolutely.
it, yeah, that's
I really,
amazing.
I've got three endings. We've completed one ending, and I've got a better ending that I think we're gonna implement. So yeah, let's.
Perfect. So yeah. Oh, okay. So the Kickstarter was super successful, also of Read of You, both the
I don't
first
know. I
book and
think
second
so.
book. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. I've lost all perspective, if I'm honest, because
Mm-hmm.
someone that's kind of always done brand work and publishing work, like I've never really dared do this because it's like putting something out and it's being like, are people gonna, is it gonna get funded? Like, are people gonna like it? Um, has are people gonna come back for more? Is the mileage I've built up over my career over 10 or 15 years, is it going to pay off in this way? Or am I only one thing? Am I an entity that can only exist within a larger structure? Because I'm very good at delivering work for clients. Like my timeliness, I can handle any deadline and I can make it look good in that time. And speed and customer service, or at the very least, speed and project management and delivery points have always been my expertise. That's what I excel at. That's why I'm like a sure thing. I'm like the surest thing. Like you come to me and you ask for a project, and it's got to be done yesterday. I'll get it done. It's the projects that don't have a deadline that you've got a problem with me, because if you don't set a deadline for a project, my time will fill with projects that do have deadlines, and then that project never gets done. So that's my flaw. But so like as someone that always did that, to do this was really hard. Actually, it probably took a year for me to dare to do it. And then we ended up. I think we did the first one in July, and the first one in July, we had about 3 months of runway, and we built up our pre-launch followers to about 250 people, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if you've got 250 people pledging $20 for a book, that is like $5,000. So when you
That's
do the
great.
maths, it's not like the most amount of money, but it can bring a book to life 100%. So we had lots of leeway, lots of promo, built that up, and we hit just under 10 grand for the first book, which was nice. And then the second book, the plan was always to launch a book every 3 months. And what I really do want to get to is I want to get to the point where I can still do my client work, but I can also launch a book every 2 or 3 months, and have readers that are enjoying the books, and I want people to enjoy the stories. I want to tell these stories. I want to entertain people fundamentally. But if I'm able to create a workflow and a really small publishing arm of my business where we're creating our own stories, delivering them to people that want to read them as we've been doing so far, and then continuing that's really the aim. So the aim was always every 3 months, but we were hitting the 3 month point, July, August, September, October. We had to launch the next one in October, and we weren't going to hit that. I wasn't going to do that. I didn't have my 3 month lead time. So we hit nearly 10 grand for the first book, USD. I didn't have the same lead time, and I was like, I need 3 months to promote it. And in the end, we literally just said, screw it. Let's just launch it in 2 weeks. So we got the pre-launch page up and we just launched it in 2 weeks. And we only had about 100 people following the page pre-launch, whereas before it was 250. So I'm doing my like mental maths, and I'm like, well, if we've only got, if there's like a 30% conversion on those people, and the average pledge is like £45, which it was for the first one, that maths doesn't scale. That doesn't work out. We're not going to hit our funding goal. Anyway, 2 weeks later, we launched it over three weeks, not 4 weeks as well. So we had a week less. But the second Kickstarter hit $16,000, and we didn't do nearly as much promo. We didn't have nearly as many people following it, but I don't know. I'm still not 100% sure the exact reasons for this, but my best guess is that we built up a following of people. About 75% of people who backed the first one backed the second one. There were people watching for the second one already, and the other thing is, what was the other thing? Maybe that big leeway, that big launch pad that I had for the first one, maybe that wasn't needed. Maybe I just assumed that was needed. So we're going to try and launch things much more quickly. So every month we have like a month runtime, and then we launch, and then we
Oh.
fulfill, and then we launch the next one. So we can speed things up hopefully as well. So that's the lesson there. But 25K for in 4 months worth of Kickstarters for the two books. That's better than I thought the first two would go. So I am happy.
Yeah. No, I loved it. When I saw it, it was always over 100%, like 300% of the goal or something
Yeah.
like that. And I was like, that's amazing. And I feel like something that's very cool about comics, it's such a niche thing, indeed. But readers
Mm.
that love comics, they love comics. So for me, it makes sense. I do think that you had like all that preparation. I think it was worth it personally
Mm.
because I think you started with the right foot, and then the rest is easier maybe, but you did all the work before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I will just say that like the people that came out to back it. I mean, I think with something like Kickstarter, like you have to do the work to make it a good project.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you also like have to be really kind of in awe of the people that come to Kickstarter and go, I like the look of that project. I'm going to trust this creator.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to
Yeah.
prepay for this project and trust this creator that they are going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the case that I had a project years ago, and this was during my busy time. I was a collaborator on the project. It was my project, but someone else ran the project. My friend Adam Cheel, and I started this project with him before I got really, really busy with the commercial work, and we just never finished it. And I really felt like I'd done him an injustice. So I pledged to him to finish it. So we launched his Kickstarter. We raised, a small amount of money, and yeah, it just took me like 2 years to actually get it done. And so the injustice that I thought that I'd um, I'd done to him and to the project, I actually did like 2 or 3 times over by trying to go back and fulfilling it. I should have left it until I had space to do that, until I did it more injustice by trying to make it right, even though no one thought I'd done any wrong in the first place. So anyway, yeah, that took a long. So I hadn't done the project before I launched it. So I always swore to myself that if I ever did a Kickstarter, I would finish the project first, and that's why I did all the work on doing this first. So I didn't let anyone down,
Mm-hmm.
so that I was able to fulfill it when I said I would, if that makes sense. And I think that pays off in dividends in the long run because people begin to trust you. The relationships that I've built with the people that have backed rid of you and come back for the next rid of you. There's stories, about dads and sons reading it together and all sorts of really heartwarming things, which is really nice. That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what I want. So yeah, it's really cool.
That's really, really amazing. Is there something you want to say to the audience about where do you think you're most active, or what's
Mm.
an advice you can give, or something?
Advice I can give. Yeah, I mean, advice is tailored to the individual typically, but I mean, I
Yeah.
think generally and broadly speaking, everyone has everyone had or has had or does have a creative dream that they're kind of squashing down, or they're ignoring, or the way I see. And don't get me wrong, like I would go back to a full time job or employment if through an employer if I needed to. It's
Mm-hmm.
loads of fun, and there's also loads of benefits to it. But the way I kind of do sometimes see this is that day jobs, etc. They tend to pay you just enough,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe slightly more, to leave your dreams on the shelf, and it's just enough. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to monetize creativity. It's almost impossible, in fairness to all of us that are trying to do it. And even when you do manage it, it's the constant struggle. So, like, it's not an easy road. Just because I did one project that was a big time project doesn't mean that there wasn't a tough year, or there were ebbs and flows in turnover.
Yeah.
There were problems with artists disappearing and me paying them and them not delivering. There was all sorts of problems with it, but fundamentally, like, if you have that creative dream in you and you're ignoring it because it's easier the other way, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. But I would challenge that person to just try. Just don't leave it on the shelf. Even if there's like an hour a week of spare time to write, 2,000 words, 1,000 words of your novel, to get you started, to get that ball rolling. Don't leave it on the shelf. Keep it active, keep it there, keep it alive, and explore it. And like whether it fails or succeeds is irrelevant. Like, just don't leave it. Like, pay attention to it, 'cause it's really important. It's you. It's the essence of you, and you need to pay attention to that.
Yeah. I personally love that. Amrit, honestly, I feel like I could do another hour of interviewing you, to be
Has
honest.
it been an hour already? Oh wow.
Yeah, no. I was like, oh, I want to ask him so many more things.
Oh,
But
I'm sorry, I rambled a lot. I do apologize.
no, no, no. I love that because you know so much. And that's why I wanted to interview you, because you have an amazing experience. And that's something you fought for. Oh, I'm super curious about how do you organize your time, precisely because you have a team, you have many projects. Do you use a tool like, I don't know, Monday or...
Good question. I've over the years I've tried many things. Tried Monday. Tried. There was actually a thing for a while called Facebook Workplace. I don't know if that still exists or not. Facebook Workplace. It's basically Facebook. It's just a duplicate of Facebook, but it's just like called Workplace. Does that exist still?
I don't know. I work on my
Well,
own.
I use that for ages.
Yeah.
And I think the problem always is getting people to use the same platform is always a nightmare. Slack seems to be a winner. Like, everyone can use Slack. So we did a project with a video game company, and we used Slack, and I got all the team involved to be using that, and that worked really nicely. But typically, what I'd have to do is manage people individually. Like, it was very hard to bring everything together. But to manage my own time, I do schedule everything. I do have like fixed periods of the week where I will shoot a video, or I will do a sketch, or I will, do something, because the weeks tend to get so busy with clients, and with now managing campaigns apparently, and doing all sorts of other things. So I do have a fixed schedule I try to stick to. I try to stick to my exercise schedule as well. So, just to keep healthy, and I'll do my best. But I mean, actually, I'm getting quite sick of algorithms and Instagram, and I'm finding it harder and harder to kind of reach my audience. I mean, I haven't got a huge following, about 20,000. It was about 24,000 at its highest, and I struggle to get the post reach that I used to get, actually. So, I mean, one of the things I'm started to do is to use Patreon. I've only started yesterday, actually, to just try, and instead of trying to reach an abundance of people, I'm just trying to reach the people that care enough about the work. It's a free Patreon. I'm not charging anything on Patreon. Like, it's the point for the Patreon that I'm going to be using is really just to post behind the scenes work for people that have backed the projects and maybe want to see how it's evolving, and also to do updates and announcements on it. So that's really, so it's just a patreon.com/Amrit_Birdi. I think it's somewhere there. And
I will make sure to include it in the bio.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. I'm not sure what the link is, but Amrit_Birdi. Yes, that's where I'm going to be trying to pay more attention and trying to kind of try and build that community up more so than the larger. The algorithms are very overbearing.
Yeah, because there's indeed an audience for artists, and it's just a little confusing now.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Reels on Instagram, and you know those templates that everyone uses, where they post their artwork within the templates.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
They really get reach. They get. I used to get maybe uh, anywhere between like 800 and 5,000 views on a story. Like back in 2017, 3,000 views on a story was probably about what I'd get, and
Wow.
it was just dropping over the years. But those templates put it back up to where it was 3, 4, 5,000 views per story, which is really nice. So that's a nice thing. And then reels, obviously, significantly more. Reels are magic. They're really great. So I'd focus on those two things. But really, I think Patreon I'm going to use to post like behind the scenes stuff and try and engage people more in a more focused way. So that's probably my 2025 focus.
I love this.
Yeah.
You're so productive, to be honest.
I get bored otherwise. If I'm not productive, I get up to mischief. That's what happens. I get up to no good. So I need to be productive. Otherwise, I'll do some chaos. I don't know what I'll do. But
I wonder if you're comfortable just how's your work-life balance? Because I can imagine, especially doing your passion, even though, of course, there's the business and the not so fun part of communicating and organizing. That's necessary. I can imagine you work, I don't know, 10-hour days at a minimum.
10 hours isn't enough. 10 hours isn't enough.
Yeah.
No, it's I used to do a lot more. I used to do, I just used to work from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. every day. Except when maybe like a Final Fantasy came out, and then I would play games from 7 till 9, and then I would work, and then I would play games from like 10 till 12. So I take a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I do. I get up at 5 a.m. these days, and I start my work. Then I do a workout, and then I work till about 9 or 10 usually. I take a few hours out in the evening, but it has to be done. Like I've just got too much that I want to get through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, completely right. I love that. You've taught us so much. I mean, we've been asking, and that's why you're here, about you being a comic artist and what you create, and that's great. But I want to hear a little bit about you as a person. What do you like more? Music, podcasts, books, or TV shows?
Good question. Depends on what I'm doing. If it's writing, it's music, and drawing, it's music. But podcasts I can really zone into. I feel like I'm learning something and being productive all at once. And if those two things can be the same thing, so if I'm drawing something and I'm listening to something about artwork production or about I don't know, Photoshop or whatever it might be. Yeah, if I could tie them in, that's nice. But yeah, podcasts. I do like my podcasts.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like it's not much talked about when I have seen artist interviews, what we listen to while we work, when we can just not focus as much. Because sometimes, only music because you need to concentrate. But I was curious.
With the writing, like I get angry with the writing. If there's any noise, if a pin drops and I'm writing, I'll just get enraged. I have to be focused. It's really intense. But with the drawing, I can do anything. I can watch a TV show. I was watching. What was I watching? Whisper of the Heart from the studio.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
I watched that the other day, and that was really good. Actually.
It's a lovely film. Yeah, I love a studio.
It was actually. Yeah, it was a lovely film. It was really like understated. But then the end was really great, and it just ended, and it was really good. But it's a whole separate conversation.
Yeah, but I love that because it's a little bit about your personality. I feel like.
Yeah, about me. I mean, there's lots of things to know about me. I wouldn't know where to start. I mean, my work is important. My work is how I express myself. Yeah. As with you, I'm sure. As with most artists, I'm sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. It was an honor to have you.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. And I'd love to do this. Anytime you ask, I'll definitely hop on to talk with you. It's always so much fun.
I'm so glad. That's perfect. All of Amrit's links will be down below. Thank you for listening and give it a thumbs up if you want more interviews like this one. Subscribe if you like talking about comics, productivity, and art. Good luck to everyone. Keep creating.